What is up, YouTube? You are watching the Skynet Gen Network, and today I'm going to be reviewing Salem Season 2, Episode 6, Ill the Met by Moonlight. Ill Met by Moonlight. Um, so, last that we left, we saw that the Countess Marburg had showed up to Mary's house, and before she left, she said she left a gift for Mary. And at the very end of the episode, we see that the gift that she left her was George's corpse. She drowned his body using magic. So pretty much he was over, like when Mary and Tituba open the door, we see that George is sitting there in the chair, head held back, and there's water just pouring out of his mouth. She completely drowned him without even having to physically throw him in any water. Um, so this episode, it picks up right from there. Mary and Tituba are trying to find a way to save George. We see that Mary takes the frog that she's been forcing George to swallow, or at least the first, actually, pretty much the whole entire show. She's been forcing him to swallow this frog. It was last week's episode where he willingly accepted, um, you know, to swallow the frog. But she takes the frog, she cuts it open pretty much, and just drains the blood from it and starts smearing it all over George's body. Throws some sand on there and starts performing a spell. We see that the flow of water stops coming out of his mouth, but it's not enough because the spell doesn't work because the water eventually just starts pouring out of his mouth again. It's not working. Tituba's like, her magic's too powerful. Just give up. You're not gonna get anything done. Mary's like, refuses to give up. She cuts her lip open and starts pretty much having her blood drain into his mouth. It doesn't end up working, so George ends up dying. Um, so we're at the same time we're taken then to a scene at a bar. We have Hawthorne boasting about how he's going to be marrying Anne Hale. Now, in a previous episode, if you remember, Cotton Mather has been spelled by Anne. Anne has spelled him because she wants him to marry her, and he kind of refused to marry her uh, before, and so she has to use magic to force him to marry her. So he's in the bar, he's listening to Hawthorne. He's been spelled. Um, we hear that he approaches Hawthorne and he's like, so you're marrying her out of love? And he's like, nah, that's not why I'm marrying her. Who said anything about love? This is where I'm talking about marriage. And, that he's only marrying her for her property, um, and pretty much to just have his way with her. Um, this pisses Cotton, it pisses Cotton off, and he just starts fighting with him. Eventually, this fight goes outside. The two are beating the hell out of each other, and we see Anne standing there, and she's like surprised to see. Well, she kind of is surprised. Like, she didn't think that her spell would actually work. This is the first spell that she's actually tried, and it's worked. And she's never seen him have this much energy in him before. Mary and Tituba eventually come out and they see this, so they realize that Anne has spelled him. Um, Mather ends up winning. Um, what's his name? The both of them eventually end up getting um, arrested for public drunkenness. Um, Eventually, the Countess Marburg shows up by boat, to Salem, and she claims to bring supplies for the good people of Salem, allegedly. And so while they're walking through the Salem, we see her Marburg talking with Mary, and pretty much like she tells Mary that she's not gonna tell anyone about George's death. You know, Uh, she plans to keep it hidden as long as she stays in good terms with her. And Mary has to keep this smile on her face, like she realizes she's a more powerful witch. She can't do anything. Not to mention that she knows that George is dead. If she starts saying anything, it's over because you know because in the previous episode, when I saw that George was dead, I was like, well, it's over. I mean, once Hawthorne finds out that George is dead, he's going to be going after that position, period, and Mary's just going to be vulnerable. She's not going to have a voice anymore. Now that her husband's dead, she's not going to be in power anymore. And this episode opens up, I thought maybe they can save him, but they didn't save him, so now she has to um, put a smile on her face and just to do whatever Marburg says. Maybe I don't know, because she is in no position to be doing anything right now. Um, so Marburg eventually goes to see the prisoners, Hawthorne and Mather. She pays the bail. They're released. Um, don't really know why she paid the bail. Maybe this was her way of meeting them. I don't know. Um, what else happens? Okay, so then we then see that Marburg, gosh, I gotta get her name right. Countess Marburg has a son, and that her son wants to marry Mary. Um, and this is probably because of the incident that happened in the previous episodes where Mary had burned one of Marburg's ships because this was because Mary was attacked and she thought that she needed to kind of have a revenge, needed to have a revenge, and she burned one of her ships. Um, so Marburg's like, okay, we need to keep a closer eye on this Mary, not underestimate her. So now she's sending her son to marry Mary to keep an eye on her. At the same time, I guess, uh, keep her in fear. I guess I don't know. Keep reminding Mary that she is not as powerful as she thinks she is, and maybe. Um, so then Marburg. So pretty much this whole entire episode is about Countess Marburg. Uh, pretty much, it's the whole entire episode. She's involved in like every scene almost, or somehow somewhat her name is mentioned in like every scene. Um, or something that has to do with her is mentioned. She eventually goes to Mercy, and and she's kind of like comforting her, trying to help her out. Mercy's like still kind of distraught that she's been betrayed, that Isaac and Dolly have escaped. She has nothing to do. She has no way of getting revenge against Mary. Um, and then Countess Marburg shows up, and she's like offering her wishes. She's like, I can grant you two wishes, and Mercy's like, first of all, why do you want to grant me wishes? Second of all, why should I even trust you? In fact, she says she can't trust anyone. She doesn't have it in her anymore. Um, so so she starts just comforting her, trying to gain her trust. Um, in the episode, we also see that Dolly and Isaac when they escaped. So Dolly wanted to help Isaac because Mercy was experimenting on him and hurting him, and she cares for him. So they ended up escaping. So Dolly, in this episode, we see Dolly asks help from this guy to help them get a new, well, not get a new identity, but find a way to get away from Salem. And he agrees to help them, and eventually we learn that he is one of Marburg's servants. And obviously he turns them into, he catches them, he turns them into, turns them in, not to the police, not to the police, he pretty much hands them over to Marburg. I don't know what happened to Isaac. They don't really show you what she does with Isaac, but um, I'm sure. I mean, obviously they didn't let him go because uh, somehow um, Marburg is helping. Marburg is helping Mercy, so she's not gonna release Isaac. So she's obviously they just didn't show what happens with him. But the bigger picture was what they were gonna do with Dolly. So when Dolly, so they pretty much Marburg ends up taking Dolly, hanging her up on the ceiling. She takes this metal, I don't know, neck brace, and it's got like pointy needles on it, and just like stabs um, Dolly with it. And there's like a little faucet on the side with a knob, and then she starts turning it, and blood starts pouring out. So Mercy's like, kind of, so she's mad that she's been betrayed, but at the same time she's kind of feeling bad that this is happening to Dolly because she knows her. I mean, she doesn't want to see this, but then you know the Countess Marburg's like, you gotta trust me on this. You know, this will help you. And so she takes the blood. She takes Mercy's hand. She reaches out, takes the blood is pouring from the faucet. She takes the blood, starts smearing it on her hand, and we see that her blood is the Dolly's blood is not curing, but healing the burns on Mercy. So when Mercy sees that, she's like, "Oh crap! Give me some more of this blood." She's like, turns the knob back on, starts it's spilling all over her body, and we see Marburg just starts spreading it all over her body. So we're assuming that she's not going to be burned anymore. She's going to be finally able to leave her house. Um, because that's why she was in the house, and she was vulnerable because she couldn't leave the house. Because obviously they would have seen her as a witch. They would have killed her right there and then. So she had to use like servants, like Isaac and Dolly to do her work. Now she's gonna be cured. She's not gonna need Dolly. Well, the Dolly's gonna be dead anyway because they're gonna drain all her blood. And Isaac, I don't know, he might still have some kind of role um, in the show. I'm sure she'll find her use of him. Um, what else? Um, so the very last scene in Salem, we see that Mary goes to the gravesite, to the forest, so there's a gravesite, and she starts digging. She's looking for something, and then it turns out that she's looking for Increase Mather. He's the father of Cotton Mather. In season one, he was like this super. Well, I mean, he's a priest, and he is like this well known for catching witches. Which so she's gonna try and bring him back to life, and we're gonna see that next episode of Salem. I don't know why she wants to bring. I mean, I'm assuming I know why she wants to bring him back to life. She wants to convince him, I guess, maybe to kill Marburg. I don't really know. Um, it's pretty risky considering the fact that Mary's a witch herself. I don't know how it's gonna work, if she's gonna bring him back and he's gonna listen to every word she says because she'll spell him or something, but next episode we're gonna have Zombie Increase making his appearance, and it's gonna be interesting to see what happens with that, because definitely wasn't expecting that to happen. Uh, didn't even know that it was possible to do that, to bring him back from the dead after he's been dead for so long. Um, I thought they had to be recently, recently had died in order to try and save him, but apparently not. So we're gonna see him coming back to life. Overall, I'd have to say that this episode was okay. It's probably the worst episode of the season. I mean, the other 5 episodes were more intense. A lot more stuff was going on. This episode just felt so short. I mean, it was an hour long, but nothing happened. I mean, nothing happened. Not a whole lot. Towards the end, it starts picking up a little bit, but otherwise, nothing really happens that much. So it was okay. Um, Still, I'm gonna have to say season 2 is better than season 1, but this show can't go on for long. I'm gonna later check and see if there's gonna be a third season of this show, because we're halfway through season 2. Um, so maybe it's gonna be interesting to see if this show is renewed for a third season. Um, and if it is, we'll see how. I mean, there's still what 7 episodes left. So we'll see where the show goes, but there really should not be more than 3 seasons of this show. Quite frankly, I don't even think there should be a third season of this show. This show is good, but it's not that good. I mean, there's a bunch of other shows on TV right now that are still don't know if they're going to be renewed or not, and they're not terrible shows. Um, Shows like Constantine, for instance. So this show, had some mixed reviews, so um, I wasn't sure that there was gonna be a second season, but the way they ended it certainly seemed like there was gonna be a second season. In which case there is. Third season, I don't know. Um, like the first season I mentioned in my previous videos was actually based on true events, regardless of the fact that witches didn't exist. Actual witches didn't exist, but the belief was that witches did exist. This season, there's nothing real. There's no truth behind this season. In the beginning, we learn about the they start talking more about the witch pox. Um, that's obviously smallpox that they're referring to. They just decided to call it witch pox. But everything else is just pretty made up, and this show is getting really fictional. I mean, if it was like it's not based on any true events, so it's hard to watch a show like this when it becomes more and more ridiculous, in a sense. So we'll see where this goes, but it's not bad, but um, it it definitely hurts the show that it's not based on true events. Um, there's a point where you gotta stop making this show more and more ridiculous. House of Cards has a problem with that. Season 1 was great. It was an original series. I thought it was great. Season 2, I like it better, even though Season 1 technically was better. Season 2 was just more intense, and I liked it. But Season 3 was kind of ridiculous. It was just a bunch of stuff happening that it's not believable. And same thing with this is the problem I'm having with this show, is that it's not believable. Some of the stuff that happens is just like, really, this happened? Come on. Um, we'll see where the show goes. You know, I was actually excited to see this week's episode, because I was like, oh my gosh, last week I thought, oh my god, this is a great episode. They killed George. What's gonna happen next? It's gonna be complete havoc. But watching this episode, I didn't feel it. It's kind of like Game of Thrones. You reach episode 9 of Game of Thrones usually, or in last season, episode 2, and then you expect the following episode to be as good. Well, not as good, but still really good. But ends up being a pretty calm episode with nothing happening. Same thing with this episode. Nothing happened. No, well, I mean, I don't want to say nothing happened, but it wasn't as intense, and I was not on the edge of my seat watching this this week's episode. You know, That's why I said it was probably the worst episode of the season. It's for those of you who have not seen this show, I'd still recommend watching it, giving it a try. Like I said in my other videos, it's not a great show, but it's a show worth checking out. Um, right now, there's not a whole lot of great shows, period, on TV, with the exception of Game of Thrones. So it's, once the summer starts, there's going to be more and more TV series that started last season. Shows like The Strain, what's another show? Um, there's a bunch of other shows that started over the summer. *Halt and Catch Fire*, which returns May 31st, I believe, on AMC. But right now there's not a whole lot of TV shows that are really great, so give it a try, see if you like it. Um, it's a pretty decent show, um, so go check it out if you can. So yeah, that's my review of this week's episode. Not a whole lot going on in this episode as in previous weeks, but definitely towards the end it got more intense, and we'll see what happens next week, where they go from this. Hopefully it's better. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I will see you next week for the next review of the Salem Season 2, Episode 7. Until then, I will see you guys. Thanks for watching.